My career started out at a property management company and has now transcended into being a vice president, but none of that would happen if I would not have engaged and networked.
Welcome to Connected FM, a podcast connecting you to the latest insights, tools, and resources to help you succeed in facility management. This podcast is brought to you by IFMA, the leading professional association for facility managers. If you are ready to grow your network and advance in your career, go to ifma.org to get started. Have you ever wondered what it takes to go from working in property management to leading large-scale facility management teams? In today's episode, host Wayne Whitzell, the second vice chair president on IFMA's Global Board of Directors, interviews Trena Ellis, the vice president of facility and physical security at Safe Credit Union. Trina shares her career journey across local builds in Northern California to international projects in India. She opens up about the shift from being a doer to becoming a delegator, the power of networking and strong vendor partnerships, and how involvement with organizations like IFMA has expanded her perspective and career. Along the way, she offers valuable insights for both seasoned leaders and professionals just starting their careers in facility management. Now, let's get into it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Connected FM podcast. I'm very excited today. I have a very special guest, someone that not only is someone I look up to in the world of FM, but someone that I consider part of my inner circle here at IFMA and in life. She's a really great person. She's a powerhouse FM, very influential in our local Northern California area here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Trena Ellis. Trina, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
For those of you who may not have ever been introduced to Trina at Fusion or at a workplace, Trina is the Vice President of Facilities and Physical Security for Safe Credit Union. And that's a company that we have some very good credit unions here in the Sacramento area and very highly regarded as being great places to work, consistently on top lists, and no small reason because of the things that you and your team have been able to do there. So congrats on that.
Thank you. Yes. We're in the running again this year.
Yes. I have no doubt. It's every year you guys get it.
Yes,
pretty much,
exactly. Right? We're excited.
So Trina, we obviously go way, way back. And I want to talk a little bit about our history and how we met. I tried to get the exact date, but I pinned it around 2007. Does that seem about right to you?
That sounds, I think, completely right. Yep. I think around those classes. Yes.
And you had already taken your CFM at that point with Tuvison from the chapter. Was he your trainer?
No, that was actually the catalyst that got me to take the test.
So for everybody that's listening, IFMA Sacramento built a Green Business Operations Certificate program for Sacramento State University. And that launched in 2008. And you and I were in the inaugural cohort.
Correct. And I think that you are right in the timing, because I had, prior to taking that Green Business Ops class at Sac State, took the certified facility manager one, or the not certified facility manager, but certified facility manager at Sac State. And that was where I initially met Kit and where I was introduced to IFMA. And I had no idea what IFMA was at that time. I didn't know what the CFM was. And so Kit encouraged me to study and to sit for the exam, and I passed. And then I became a certified facility manager, and then took the Green Business Ops classes to push into lead and go that direction. And that was where I met you. Yeah.
Wait, Kit was so influential, wasn't he? He was just about everywhere. And who would have thought you would have thought about your CFM and hear about IFMA in a university? Now, I will admit, and I think we both have to cop to this, that we were probably both the people that got in trouble the most in class at the Green Business Operations program. We sat together and were like in junior high a lot of days, making jokes and cracking up.
In trouble. Yes. We were asked to share with the class what we were talking about multiple times.
And didn't you show up once with, I think it was a presentation on an Apple Drive, and it didn't work, and I remember how frustrated.
And bringing that up.
Yes.
So what happened was we were Apple then when I was at Power School in my 21 years back then. We were Apple for about 6 years during that time. And so I had a Mac, and I built my presentation on a Mac, brought the USB in to a PC, and none of my graphics rendered properly. And the advice you gave me, I remember when I sat back down was, I can't remember the exact advice, but it was, it's okay. It's okay. Just you did well in just kind of pushing through it. But it was a bit challenging doing my presentation when all of the cool graphics I created didn't flow.
I could tell that I know now that I know you better, I even appreciate more how that frustrated you. Plus the fact that I'm sitting there in the audience giving you the David Schwimmer Ross.
Bring it down, because I was maybe a little bit upset publicly to the class that it wasn't working, because that was something that I remember whenever I'm doing presentations now.
Mm-hmm.
It had to happen for me to be successful at presentations now, because I don't ever rely on the presentation any longer. I rely on the knowledge that I am conveying, and I don't, rely on what is on my slide.
Right.
And so that had to happen. I had to get upset, and I had to learn from it.
Would you like to share with our listeners what you and I do to each other prior to presentations?
I was wondering if you were going to bring it up. So I waited. So what Wayne and I do, because we do present a lot to different venues and different events and programs. And if we are presenting at the same event, we will give each other a word that they have to incorporate into the presentation. And I have given Wayne words like albondigas, and can't even remember the others. I think the albondiga, or did you give me albondigas?
No, I think you gave me that, and I gave you fruit roll-ups once. I think
Yes.
motorboat was one.
Yes, fruit roll-up was actually a really tough one, because I remember that specifically because I was presenting on the build out that I did for Power School at their headquarters building in Folsom. And it was a almost 50,000 square foot build out of 2 buildings, full gut, full everything new, carpet, paint, wiring, furniture. And I incorporated, when I showed the slide of all the old carpet being dug up and scraped up that had been there for 20 years, said that it represented, it was kind of like fruit roll-up. It was as dry as
It was
fruit
great.
roll-up. Yeah.
And that was a beautiful build out that you did there. And I think that was kind of the first time I would always talk to FMs and hear, to this day, you hear FMs that are complain, rightfully so, about sometimes they don't have any control of the design build process, getting a seat at that table. And I remember I mentioned that to you once, and you kind of looked at me like, what are you talking about, Wayne? It didn't even occur to you that you wouldn't have a seat at the table, and that this is actually a big thing among FMs. I found that very interesting. You and Linda Besetny both gave me that reaction, because I belong there. That's what FMs should be doing. And it's interesting that you just assume that, and you are at every table, and you have such tremendous influence on these build outs. Now, let's start with that one that you did in Folsom there. I mean, you were involved in everything for the process, sourcing the building, lease negotiations, everything. I mean, there's a lot of hats you were wearing for that process. And I mean, talk to me a little bit about all the things that you went through there, and you were a pretty small FM team at the time, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. And that one was my very first project. I had been introduced to smaller projects at Apple. And then when we were Pearson at Power School, I was working with someone from New York who was a project manager doing a project for us in Rancho. I was kind of like the person on the ground here, but I wasn't running the project. But when we got bought by Vista, I was able to source that building through CBRE and get that really phenomenal building in Folsom right on the river. That one, I worked with our brokers. We searched, high and low through Folsom to find a building, found that building, got that lease negotiated and signed, and then started working on, it was an old video company called BPD. And they had really large cubicles, very dated aesthetic. And so I was able to work with designers from local furniture company. And it was the first time doing open plan. And that was a predominantly engineering environment. So a lot of change management had to happen prior to everyone moving in. But I worked with various vendors in Sacramento that I'd built relationships with for many, many years through other projects. And to your point, I was very involved with our C-suite and my CFO, and showing them the design, showing them the different aspects of what we could provide for our staff and headcount. And then, also plan for growth as well in the space. And I remember I went to the CEO and I showed him the drawings, and I said, okay, so this is what we have. And at that time I had 6x8 cubes. So they were all lower with glass, but the building architecture itself was just so phenomenal. It was easy to design for an engineering environment. But my CEO at the time said, well, we need to put more people in here. So, and I had also had my budget number already from the vendors, from the furniture vendors. And he says, okay, I want you to bring it down by 500,000, but I also want you to have 6x6 cubes. And I said, oh, so you want me to come down in cost with my vendors, but have them provide more products? He said, exactly. Well, I did it, but it was a lot of negotiation. It was a very stressful time, but I was able to get exactly what we needed. And I kept our C-suite involved. I kept, all of the stakeholders involved, all the leadership. That's the key. And then also getting information from all of the staff that are going to be sitting in those spaces to ensure that what we're providing is going to work for them. And one of the biggest pieces of what we did there was providing sit-to-stand workstations out. So that was back in 2016, and it was big back then, and it's still big
Radical.
today because I just did a build out here at SAFE and did the same thing. But the point that I want to make with all that is, yes, kept everyone involved, stakeholder engagement, kept the employees involved, gave update photos, provided information to staff so they understood exactly the timeline and what we were installing and the progress of the construction. But one of the biggest takeaways from that project is vendor relationships. And I'm not making this up. This was close to a 50,000 square foot space, 2 buildings that were connected by a breezeway, full gut renovation with some walls coming down, some walls going up, all new carpet, paint, Cat 6 cabling, furniture, and brand new furniture everywhere, including an amazing game room and an amazing event room as well. We got permits, and I'm not making this up, the week of Thanksgiving, and we moved in on February 4th.
Crazy.
It's crazy. And even my DC and my furniture vendors, to this day, if I see them, we always talk about, we don't know how we did that. And you know what? It was because those vendors were so committed to me as an FM and to what we were doing that they came through. Like it was.
Well, could have also been the word got around that you don't want Trena Ellis coming to your office demanding a signature on the permit. What I think is so interesting is because I was kind of with you along this ride as you were doing all this and watching you. And it wasn't very long before you made a pretty big leap from Folsom to Bangalore, India.
Yes.
So
yes.
I think you built a lot of credibility with this Folsom build. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, Trina's going to India. Tell us about.
Well, it wasn't that quick, but
well, it seemed like.
Let me tell the story. No, I'm kidding. So what happened is Power School, the company that I was with for 21 years prior to coming here, wanted to have a presence in India. And so we had contractors already in India, about 125. And I worked with our legal team at Power School, along with HR, IT, the whole C-suite, everyone, to build the India entity, which was Power School India Private Limited, and then worked with my CBRE brokers again, sourced them in India. My local guy found a couple guys in India. We shortlisted about 7 locations that I pointed out in the area that we wanted to be in Bangalore. And then my CFO and the VP of finance flew over, looked at the spaces that I had shortlisted, and then we FaceTimed and did a lot of stuff to look at the different spaces. And then we found a space on an 8th floor of an already built out building in a business park. And it was literally concrete and fire pipe. There was nothing else in the space, subfloor. And I flew over in October of 2018 or 2017 for just 1 week, which was a huge mistake because flying to India is 16-hour flight from SFO to Dubai, and then from Dubai to Bangalore is 4 hours. So it's a lot of travel, a lot of jet lag. So I get over there and went straight to the space. And I already had about 5 different vendors, lined up to do the build out. And in America, I have, lots of relationships with folks. I have GCs and architects and all the different vendors that it takes to build out a space. Well, in India, I really didn't know anyone. And our CEO at the time told me, hey, can't trust people. You've got to make sure you know the right people in India when you're doing projects and dealing with vendors. So I listened to his advice, and I found these vendors that do full scope work all the way from sourcing the space all the way to property management and custodial at the end. I interviewed about 5 different companies. And I had already walked the space. And as I walked this very long rectangular space, it was probably about a 45,000 square foot space. As I'm walking the space in my head, I am designing it and figuring out where everything is going to go. So later that day, I had interviews with about 5 different vendors that day and a couple more the next day. And I told each of them how I had designed it in my head. Well, we then met face to face, and only one of those vendors came with drawings with my ideas already on paper. And it was phenomenal. I was like, whoa, like you literally took what I had in my head and put it on paper. And so after much negotiation, I chose that vendor. And then I flew back in January of 2018. And we did all of the MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and network design, and all of the actual physical design of the space.
How long were you there that second visit?
Need business supplies from cleaning wipes to filtered water? Know you have a trusted partner to turn to. ODP Business Solutions makes it simple to keep things running smoothly with trusted cleaning supplies and break room essentials delivered fast. Whether you run a hospital, hotel, or cleaning crew, they have your back and can help you restock with consistency, convenience, and less stress, all from a trusted single source. Visit odpbusiness.com to learn more.
Second visit, I got smarter. I did 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So those 2 weeks, I'm getting to know all the Vestian folks, and they're amazing. One of the biggest compliments I ever got, so hopefully this doesn't sound too braggy, but one of the biggest compliments I got was first day, we do all the design work, right? We are looking at carpet samples and fabrics and just all of it. We ended up having to go because they had everything designed very ornate and very India-like. So I was like, no, we're bringing California to India. So we're going to change this up a bit. So we had to go to a fabric store. We brought back more books, and it was a full 10-hour day of doing this design. And we ended up, and I had carpet samples, Shaw carpet samples from here, from our space in Folsom. I had different fabric colors that I knew I was going to use. And so we found everything and got it done. That evening, the project manager guy says to me, hey, tomorrow we're going to be doing MEP and network design. I'm going to need your guys from America on the phone. I was like, my guys from America? And he goes, yeah. He goes, because we're going to be doing mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and networking. I said, I'm good. I won't need any of my guys from America. And he was like, what? And I said, I'm good. I said, if I have to call someone, I will, but I don't think I will. So the next day, 3 guys, introduce mechanical, 3 guys introduce electrical. We went through the whole thing all day long, another 10-hour long day. And I was kind of, working through each of them and said, look, we don't do it like this in America. So you're going to have to educate me on why you're doing it this way. There were some things that I relented and allowed, but there were some things I was like, no, we're not doing it that way. Let's do it this way. And this is why. And we did that through the whole MEP and networking process. We got to the end of the day, and the project manager guy just sat back in his chair. He's just flabbergasted. And I said, what is wrong? Are you okay? He goes, I just can't believe how much you know about everything. I was like, well, I told you I didn't need my guys from America. So he's like, we're not used to dealing with someone like you that knows facilities all the way through. And so it was a huge compliment, and I've never forgotten that moment. So
that's the OGFM archetype, right? It's someone that sits, I think it was Chip Heath at World Workplace said that FMs are the decathletes of the business world. We do so many different things. And for you to have all of this knowledge, mechanical design side, as well as nuts and bolts O&M on top of all that, as well as the psychology of interacting with people, it really, this is what being in this career a long time and leaning into it and learning from your vendor partners, learning from the education that's provided by orgs like IFMA puts you in this position where eventually, and this carries over, and you told me many stories in your day-to-day in your current job where, I guess the way the phrase I like to use is, though age has taken away my ability to read a book up close, it's giving me the ability to see things a mile away.
Ooh, I like that.
And I think that's the thing is you walk into these things and you see what the GCs are doing, and you instantly can play out the secondary, tertiary, quaternary ripple effects of this choice. you know, this is not what you want to do. This is how it should go. And that experience is just amazing to have that. And I think IFMA's, probably been a big help in that for you. Talk about, your IFMA
Yeah.
journey and your IFMA experience and maybe how that's fed into the skill sets in your tool belt.
Oh, 100%. And, and I told that story, but the precursor to that is absolutely, I would not know the things that I know had it not been the education and the networking and the exposure to all of those different types of vendors that provide services. And, over the years, I worked to, hire a lot of vendors through IFMA because I would go to an event and go, oh, I need that, oh, I need that. Or I loved the fact that I didn't know what I didn't know. And then I was, oh, okay, I should implement this. And it was huge. And my career wouldn't be where it is today. I wouldn't have the knowledge I have of vendor management and the way to engage and do the things that I do without IFMA and the networking aspect of. And I'm not just trying to brag because you've got a logo on your shirt. I'm just telling you that it's the truth. I would not be where I am today.
Would you see this logo? I went old school for this.
I'm telling
This
you,
is
I
the IFMA
noticed.
Sacramento shirt for 2009, 7,
I
8,
know
9,
it.
somewhere in
Yes.
there. Yeah, I went old school.
I should have displayed my IFMA. I have a couple of IFMA words on my
Yes, you
shelf
do.
over here. Yes. The engagement is huge. The networking aspect, giant. And then, not to mention the fusions and the world workplaces and all of the educational aspects of what you learn there. And it's
I
just
think we'd be
vital.
remiss though if we didn't talk specifically with you about the personal relationships that we have at IF. We try to explain to folks sometimes who might be in organizations which are perhaps not quite, I call us huggy. We're a huggy organization. And I know some people that person has their own personality type and so forth, but I mean that both support wise, physical wise, everything. There's a love here among this. And I think Sacramento, one of the things that always resonated with me about that chapter, and that's really the chapter where I blossomed. Okay, it's my second IFMA chapter. And it started with a hug from the former president, Cynthia Smith. And from there, it just, that chapter never let go. And it was a very important thing for me to notice that oftentimes people would come to chapter programs and meetings, regardless of what the program was about, because they just wanted to see their friends and they wanted to connect that way on a human level. And I think that was something very special that the Sacramento chapter had. You would notice we go to World Workplace. If there was a lone person, we would just grab that person, bring him in and put whatever swag we were carrying with us on here. You're one of us now.
Yep.
And
Your bag is a perfect example of that.
Exactly.
Never went to World Workplace alone by herself, and Sacramento picked her up and never let go.
yeah.
Literally, because she's.
And I think you've been an inspirational leader because you led through a very tough time in this chapter and to back terms to support us through that which shall not be mentioned in
Correct.
recent years. But
Sounds
you,
like Obed. Yeah.
but you now, it's not just IFMA that you have gotten involved with. There's some pretty cool organizations sister organizations and other organizations. Talk to me about, the development zones and the Crime Stoppers and the other organizations that you're involved.
Sure. At my prior company, when I was at Power School, I left Power School in 21 and came to Save Credit Union. And I had always managed office buildings and that office environment. And coming to a credit union was, I have an amazing team at Save. Everyone is so talented. I have administrators, facilities administrators. I have a couple of facility managers, a technical facility manager that reports to me. They're all phenomenal. And I could not be happier with the team that I inherited. And when I came here, we have a large headquarters building, which is about 100,000 square feet. So that's, a beast to manage itself. We had about 20 branches. We closed some and we're building new ones. So right now we have 17. And I did not realize, I've always managed physical security, but I didn't realize physical security to the degree that I do now. And because I was only managing physical security for office buildings, I knew I had to refine that skill set. So I got involved with Crime Stoppers here locally in Sacramento, the Sacramento chapter of Crime Stoppers. And Crime Stoppers, I'm on the executive board. I am now the treasurer. I was the secretary for about 3 years. I am now treasurer of that organization. And basically, we sit once a month and go over all of the different crime that's happening in Sacramento. And I sit in a room with about 45 to 50 different jurisdictions of law enforcement in Sacramento, including FBI, parole, probation, postal service, sheriff, every jurisdiction of police and sheriff. And we talk about some of the tips that have come in and any of those tips that lead to an arrest. If they do lead to an arrest, we vote as a team, and that person who put that tip in, if that tip leads, because that tip led to an arrest, we vote up to $1,000 to award that individual anonymously. Let's say it was for a murder and that person gave some information to help officers find this individual. And it's not on conviction, it's on arrest. So we vote for that one. It would definitely be at the cap of $1,000. And then we take, input from officers in the room that may have been involved in that case. And of course, everyone has to sign an NDA in that meeting. I just have to preface that. But
Okay.
yes, we can't talk about things that happen inside that room. But what happens is that individual will anonymously, they'll call back into the call center in Canada, and they will get the fact that they received $1,000. And then they will make up their own code word. And that code word is, they can take that code word into two of our Safe Credit Union branches, one of two of our Safe Credit Union branches, and they just have to say the code word and the money is provided to them with no questions asked. So that's how SAFE is involved. But all of the relationships that I built through that association, through Crime Stoppers, helps me when I'm dealing with real true crime at our branches. And we have skimming devices. We have ATMs trying to be, folks trying to, lots of the bad guys are always trying to one up and come up with something new.
I think with all the things that you do and the experience you've gotten, both leading in the organizations you worked for, but also leading and herding the cats that can sometimes be an IFMA component, you really have such a wide array of skill set, but you're also, I've noticed a change in you over the years. And you've always been a doer, and you're always somebody. What's kind of funny when I watch you around people sometimes, it's kind of like the story of the project manager in India, is that people look at you and they might not know the depth of knowledge that you have. You can go granular. You can go microscopic with people and facilities and talk about the most inane, topics, all the way to moving up to complex strategy, moving from a doer to a delegator. And I've seen that growth in you over these years. And I think that this is why game recognizes game. And I think a lot of leaders see that and they say, we need to get her on our board. And she needs to come over here because she's got that capability. And it opens up a lot of other avenues. But I think the other thing too is someone with your level of talent and ability can get so many people pulling on you for your time and for your skills and your efforts. Talk to me a little bit about what it's like, and maybe put in your mind that there might be someone out there, that a young FM, and she wants to know, what is it like to move from a local FM into maybe an executive role? Like when you go from FM to maybe director to VP, which you are now, what are a few tidbits you're saying, or just pull back the veil and say, here's what's different and here's what you should be practicing or getting to know?
Such a great question. So when I went from, and this was, a learning steps here, is I, like you said, always a doer, love to get things done and have something to look at and see it finished. So when I was at Power School and I was a facility manager, and I, advocated for myself, I didn't just get handed a director position. I pushed for it. And I actually think because you've always been my mentor, I reached out to you for advice on how to obtain and what I needed to say and the things I needed to do to get that. And so I used my resources, got advice from you and others to push to prove to them that I deserved this director position. I got the position, but the hardest part of that, I was already working in that role, but I really wasn't delegating and allowing my team to do the things, I wasn't teaching and cultivating because I wanted to still do. And you really have to let that go. And I think I probably talked to you about that as well. And one of the things I came up with is, it just came to me one day, and I thought, whenever there is a director in a movie, that director is sitting in a chair that says director, and they're just directing. And they still have to do things, but the majority of the time they're directing. And so that's how I started to picture myself, as in a director chair, teaching and guiding and doing it that way. There was still a lot of things I still did, of course, but it helped me kind of visualize what a director really should be. I've never not been a doer. I mean, even as a vice president, I'm definitely a doer, but I have an amazingly capable team here that I allow them to do their jobs. And then when I worked in that director role for a couple of years. And then I was able to do the project in India. I did a big build out in New York, in Manhattan, which was an amazing project. I got to do a large project in Roanoke, Virginia. And I say I mean we, because me and my facility team that was in those areas of New York and in Roanoke and India, because Raja Ramu is my guy in India and he's still there and he's doing an amazing job. And he's a perfect example of that guiding and mentoring. Is I went over, I hired Raja. He's an amazing person, an amazing soul, and very smart. And he did the first build out. He was my guy on the ground from America. Because what we did is in January, I didn't finish that story. We did all the design. We managed that project remotely with Raja on the ground until May. Flew back for 3 weeks at the end of May of 2018, and we finished the job and finished the project. And so the next project that we did in India, because we did another space, I just let Raja run it and I didn't even fly over. I just did it all remotely and let Raja run with it. And it was amazing. Of course, I guided and, did some stuff. And then after I'd left Power School, I had negotiated 2 or 3 floors in an adjacent building, and we were eventually going to move those 2 spaces to 1. And they just last year just did that build out, and Raja ran it. I'm pretty sure along with some facility folks here in Sacramento or Tulsa. But yeah, so anyways, I think I went off.
No, I think you summed that up really well. You went in that first iteration with that first build out was you were there intimately involved at the most, basic levels. And then the second one, you developed that trust. You built that with someone, you invested that was, and you knew they would reach out to you if they reached something, stumbling block or an issue they needed to reach out to you for. You had regular check-ins and you developed that executive skill set and persona, and you did it. And I know it's tough for some folks, especially, people like you who know how to do the thing. And you delegate the thing to someone else. It can be difficult, but I don't know. I just really think that, a lot of, whether you know it or not, a lot of folks in our chapter look up to you. And if they don't look up to you or know you, they respect you at least. You carry that air about you. And I think that started, maybe this is a good place, to close out here, is when I first came to your facility there at Pearson, every time I would come over to visit you, you exemplified what I found to be the quintessential telltale sign of a good FNM. When you walked around, everybody knew your name, you knew everybody else's name, and there was comedy and jokes going on. Hey, can I get that chair replaced? I mean, all the little things that you would hear along the walk, but you could tell that you were flowing with your lifeblood was flowing through that facility. It was intimately related there. And only FMs I walk with that kind of have that, even in a large facility where there's some kind of interplay, or the NBW, right? Managed by walking. And it's something that you've always brought to you. That's one of the consistent things through all those changes, that you were there and you were arbiter of the culture and the protector of the culture, I should say, throughout all that. Yeah. And that's something that you've also done at IFMA, at our chapter, as well, something you should be, thanked for and respected for all the years of service you've done there. So listen, you and I are both, from around the same era. We like the same music. We like the same kind of things and everything. So we're looking down at this younger generation. So if we leave today here right now, and what would you say to, let's say, a young lady who's considering getting into FM, or maybe she's a coordinator wondering if, she wants to continue with this field. Let's close out with, what advice would you give to her to inspire her or to guide her?
I think number one, and I use this a lot when I'm talking to groups, is talking about that networking and engagement, and finding an association like IFMA that will help you, again, learn what you don't know, because there's just so much to know in facilities that you're not going to know it all when you're first starting out. I mean, my career started out at a property management company and has now transcended into being a vice president, but none of that would happen if I would not have engaged and networked. Another thing that I always taught my staff is, whenever a vendor comes to the building to fix something, you always watch what they're doing and ask questions. Because I don't know, like I talked about that MEP example, I don't know how to fix an air conditioner, but I know how to speak to whatever the problem is, to, talk to the vendor to say, this is what, is happening and this is what I think it might be. And then they will tell me yes or no, that's what the problem is. So I don't know how to fix all of the electrical and networking and all of that stuff, but I know how to speak to it to be able to, convey what the problem is, to get to a solution. and troubleshoot. And I learned that from all of the vendor engagement. And that's the key, I think, is vendor engagement.
No woman or man is an island, right? Yeah.
Right. Right.
Well, Trina, this has been a blast catching up with you and doing this. I consider you more than just a local FM. You're a really good friend of mine, and I'm both proud and awe and just great to know you as a human being. So thank you for everything you've done for our industry, in particular for IFMA.
Well,
All
thank
right.
you so much. Thanks for having me. It was great. And I adore you as well.
Yes. All right, everyone. Thanks again for joining us on Connected FM. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning into the Connected FM podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review the show because it really helps us reach more listeners just like you. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. See you next time.